Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast, IDP edition. I'm your host, John Macri, fantasy analyst here at PFF. It's Thanksgiving week, at least in America. Anyways, we here in Canada celebrated our Thanksgiving in October because we like to be different, I guess. But since it's American Thanksgiving, I had to have one of my favorite Americans, who I'm very thankful was able to make some time in his busy schedule to come on the show today from fantasypoints.com. He is the legendary Justin Varnes. Justin, how are you today, my friend?
John, doing well, man. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, always a busy time, but it's actually, as busy it is for you and I, it's just awesome for football fans. This week we not only have three matchups, as usual on Thanksgiving Day, but we got this cool Friday matchup at Miami, which is going to be fun. So it's nice to get the football to spread out a little bit. It's way easier to keep track of your fantasy teams if there's not 14 matchups all happening at the same, 4 or 5 hour block. So we'll take it. We'll take the spread out, even if that means more work for you and I. We're here to sacrifice for our people.
Yeah, it always means more work as these games are kind of spread out on more days, but it's still fun. It's fun to get kind of more island games, and like you said, we get to kind of focus on our fantasy teams and betting a little bit more. So that's always fun as the NFL tries to dominate all of the holidays, because why not? But yeah, I'm excited to get into this, man. We got no bye weeks this week, so again, we're gonna go game by game. We got the timestamps; they'll be in the episode description as well, so people can jump around to find the games they're looking for, but we're going to cover like main storylines or focus on like least favorite matchups for every team as well. We'll have the matchup based visuals for the YouTube crowd, and if you are on the YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe while you're here. That also helps me a ton, and I really appreciate that. And then happy to answer start sit questions and interact with folks in the YouTube comments as well. I'll check in there throughout the week, so feel free to ask questions, jump in the comments below. And then I'll also have the link to my IDP rankings on PFF.com and the link to the PFF IDP fantasy report in the episode description as well. All right, one last quick piece of business here. We do have to give a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor, Fabric by Gerber Fall is all about the back to school and back to routine checklist, and the most important task on that list should be securing your family's financial future, starting with life insurance. Fabric by Gerber makes it quick, easy, and affordable to protect your family so you can get back to enjoying life. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget with quality policies like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You could go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/fantasy. That's meetfabric.com/fantasy. MEETfabric.com/fantasy. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, Justin, let's get things started here with the first game of the week, Thursday afternoon on Thanksgiving. It is the Green Bay Packers at the Detroit Lions. Where do you want to start off with this game?
Well, let's start off by discussing what a different matchup this is than it has been in the plenty of years prior. This Green Bay offense was already sluggish and slow and not producing much for IDP production. But, once you remove Aaron Jones, I think it's going to be even worse. I'm really concerned about the Detroit Lions linebackers. I mean, as it is now, the Packers are already bad in terms of producing snaps and tackles, particularly to the linebackers. But with their running game obviously taking a big hit here, how do you think this is going to impact Alex Anzalone and Jack Campbell?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have Jack Campbell even ranked this week. That's how bad it's gotten over there for him. Like his snaps have dropped, right? He dropped to 61% of snaps this past week, and it's been kind of steadily falling. And Derek Barnes took over as their LB2 there. He played, I think, 95% of the snaps in week 11, I guess it was now. And yeah, not overly high on him either. Like you said, the matchup isn't great. Packers allowing the 30th most tackles to linebacker position, so third fewest there. And Alex Anzalone, he's been solid all year, surprisingly, but he still has that tendency to be inefficient. So I have him as like LB 30 this week, so he's a little bit lower for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you play Dynasty, I'm not hitting the panic button on Jack Campbell at all. I mean, right. We've seen it time and time again, particularly for a position as complicated as linebacker. Sometimes it just takes a year or two. And Anzalone's been running that defense for a while. And, we've talked ad nauseum about how he continues to be the every down player there. But look, that offense is, that defense is really humming right along. So it's to me, I feel like it's more like it's going really well for them, and they just don't have the need to force a rookie into a lot of action.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it'll take a year or two, probably just this year as a little transition. But so dynasty wise, I'm worried. But yeah, I've been sitting him for a while. Now the Packers, they have been throwing the ball at least a little bit more. That's helped some safety stuff. One of the players I'm focused on, and I want to get your opinion on, John, is Brian Branch. Their hybrid corner, slot corner / safety. He's moved around a little bit more lately, but the Packers do not produce a ton of activity. Do you see Brian Branch having one of those 6-7 tackle games, or do you think he's going to fall a little short of that this week?
Yeah, I guess I'm hopeful that he can get back in that range, because I have him like outside of the top 12 safeties, so safety 16 or so for me. So like a mid-range safety too, but he's found ways to be productive and have some bigger games, but. Yeah, like you said, it's kind of like a neutral matchup as far as safeties go, and he's been more of like a slot corner more than anything. But like you said, recently he's been moving around quite a bit as well. So he's not like your typical safety. He's not your typical corner. He's just kind of been moving around the defense, getting some different alignments there. He had like 20% of his snaps in the box last week as well, which was cool to see. So yeah, I guess I have faith in Brian Branch. More of a safety too for me this week.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, he played a decent amount of snaps on the defensive line last week too. I mean, they are moving him around. They're keeping him, within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, and somebody has to move the ball there in Green Bay. And I just think where he plays and how they use him, we've seen this before with other safeties and DBs where the defenses can kind of be set up to leave a player or two, as more of a spy or a rover, and often that's linebackers, but I think they're using Branch a little bit more in that way. So because of that, I think he's got a fairly high tackle floor. I'm not, I think it caps his ceiling this week more than it does his tackle floor. I've got him basically between 6 and 7 tackles. So I'm still okay using him. If he has a slow week, is one thing I always say, like, some of these players, if they have a slow week and that it's a bad matchup, you can just brush it off and fire them back up next week. And that's what I think we're going to see some from these Detroit IDPs, a little lowered production, and that's okay. We'll move on to a better matchup next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't panic on these guys after one down week, especially at the defensive back position. If you really, if the production's been consistent for them all year, there's bound to be some down weeks for these guys. It is a volatile position after all. And then the only other thing I had for the Lions, at least, was Aiden Hutchinson, who's been really solid all year, but draws a tougher matchup this week against Zach Tom, the right tackle, I believe, there for the Green Bay Packers. 74.4 pass blocking grade for him. Jordan Love has been like around average as far as turning pressures into sacks. So I still have Hutchinson like as edge 10, but a little bit lower than where I've typically had him, because he's still got the playing time, still has the pass rush metrics, but a little bit of a tougher matchup. Like you said, really all around for this Detroit defense.
Do you see anything on the for the Green Bay IDPs that look good this week?
Yeah, so for Green Bay, starting with the linebackers, the Lions given up the 5th most tackles per game to the linebacker position, which we obviously love for somebody like a Quay Walker, for example. So I have him as LB12 this week. Devondre Campbell is questionable, so he left last game, I think.
Yep.
Or,
With
yeah,
a shoulder stinger. Yeah.
that's right. So we don't know if he's going to play. And obviously, with it being a short week, that always makes it a little bit trickier. But if Devondre Campbell can't go, then really like Isaiah McDuffie to kind of step in there. He's been really efficient this season. I think he's 16.8% tackle efficiency, which is 4th among linebackers who have played at least 25% of snaps. So if Campbell isn't able to go, I think McDuffie is one of those players that we need to pick up and plug into the lineups this week.
Yeah, and for those of you in the betting world, between that questionable roster move there. And the same thing with Darnell Savage. I know he's been designated to return from IR, and Jonathan Owens has been starting in his place. These are, these might come down to the wire, but I'm looking for when these betting lines open up for both of these positions, because I think both the linebackers and safeties have a pretty good matchup here. It's just a matter of which of these guys will be out there. So, whether it's Campbell or McDuffie at linebacker, or whether it's Owens or Savage at safety, I'm confident that those two positions in general will probably fare pretty well this week. Again, it's these combinations of Green Bay has a slow offense. Their pace is I think it's worst in the league at this point. They're not productive, and Detroit has a great defense. So that's probably going to keep Green Bay's IDPs on the field a ton. And I definitely want to get a little bit of that action. I also like, I tell you, a guy I've been using a lot lately is their slot corner, Keyshawn Nixon. He's got, he's somebody that has kind of similar to what we're talking about with Brian Branch. We'll talk about it more with Kansas City's Trent McDuffie. Their role just keeps them around the line of scrimmage. I know it's not a great matchup for Green Bay's cornerbacks, but Keyshawn Nixon is another guy. I think not a high ceiling, but a higher floor than it may seem heading into this matchup.
Nice. Yeah, love that. And then the other piece here, it will be a fun matchup to watch, is Rashawn Gary versus Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell, 81.8 pass blocking grade, which is 8th best among offensive tackles. He hasn't allowed a sack all year. Jared Goff, also one of the best at avoiding sacks this season, 13.5% pressure to sack conversion rate. So tougher matchup here for Rashawn Gary, who we're very excited about that he was playing coming off that ACL and was dominant, and it's kind of slowed down here a little bit as that playing time has gone up, but did get a sack last week. So it's going to be tougher for him this week. He's not necessarily like a must start for me this week against the Lions.
Yeah, same here. It's just great to see him back playing again, but particularly with these O-line, D-line matchups, it's one of the ones where, particularly if they're not getting moved around a lot, like for example, Cleveland's defensive line, they move around like crazy chess pieces. So it's hard to like zero in on a particular matchup. I don't think Gary moves around that much. So if it looks like a bad matchup, it more often than not, you're just getting a sack is already such a volatile statistic to rack up. But when the odds are stacked against you, and particularly if you have other pass rushers, you might be able to throw in there. This might be a week to shy away from Gary.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the second Thanksgiving game of the week, and it is the Washington Commanders at the Dallas Cowboys. And let's start with the Cowboys linebackers, because I feel like this group, again, I was down on them last week. I'm still not fully ready to trust them. Marquise Bell, we saw had his snaps drop significantly in week 10, went right back up here in week 11. So like the idea of Marquise Bell, especially with the like DB designation and the safety designation, playing linebacker, but it's not necessarily a full-time role, not one of the better matchups here. So I'm kind of like on the fence about Marquise Bell. So I don't know. Do you feel any better about him? I'm not overly excited about him until I see some consistency there, basically.
Well, I think there's two factors here. The whole how Dan Quinn is shifting their safeties and linebackers around. It seems like every week he's retooling that, which is great for the Dallas defense, but terrible if you're hoping to have at least one player to rely on. I mean, because Marquise Bell is basically a safety. So if you count the other three safeties that they use, I know he's functioning as a linebacker, but in Dan Quinn's mind, he's got all of these chess pieces. He can constantly move them around. That alone creates a lot of volatility that makes it hard to rely on. The other factor is, you talked about those lowered snaps. There's been a couple of times, and I think week 10 was one of them, where Dallas got up to such a nice lead that they just started resting their players, as they should. They have playoff, if you're a Cowboys fan, you have playoff aspirations every year, but they particularly in that weak division. So we've seen snaps drop, particularly in the IDPs, when they feel like the game is well in hand. And Their matchup this week, I mean, they're favored by 12 at home. So that's the other thing that I'm concerned about. Does Dan Quinn again elect to sit some of his players later in the game? So I'm pretty nervous all the way around to start either of these linebackers. If I'm starting anyone, I think it's and this also goes for the safeties. I think if I'm starting anyone, it's going to be Bell, because I feel like he has the most opportunity and he'll be around the ball the most. But I'm not thrilled about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have him as like LB 43 this week. He's the highest of the Cowboys for me. And you're right; they've shown a tendency to rest these guys, and it's translated to the safety position as well, as you mentioned, the rotating these guys around. Donovan Wilson, Jaron Curse, Malik Hooker are all kind of moving around and coming off the field quite a bit. So all of these guys are kind of lower for me this week. Donovan Wilson, the highest of the safeties at safety 28. It is a nice matchup for Dallas cornerbacks on paper. The Commanders giving up the ninth most tackles per game to the cornerback position. We know Deron Bland has been kind of a pick six merchant here this season. He's got 4 of them now, but this could be a nice matchup for him to kind of get some tackles as well. I have him as CB5 this week, but anything else for the Cowboys for you?
I don't think so. I mean, Deron Bland, if he gets an interception this week, Twitter's going to go nuts. And it's a pretty good matchup for him to get an interception. I will say Sam Howell, I mean, we'll talk a little offense just for a second because of how it affects our IDPs. But I do think Sam Howell's playing better. That he's starting to settle in. So I don't. He doesn't seem to be as erratic as he was. So I'm certainly not throwing a lot of money on another Deron Bland interception this week.
Yeah, I'm a Sam Howell fan, so I'd like to see him kind of settling in, like you said, and he's been slightly better at avoiding sacks recently. He's still taken 51 on the year, which is a lot, and I'm sure Micah Parsons is going to be in line for another big game because of it. I even like DeMarcus Lawrence this week too. DeMarcus Lawrence quietly has been really good, right? 82.8 pass rush grade, 91.1 run defense grade. Both of those are top 10 marks at his position. The only problem is he's playing a career low 52% of the defensive snaps, so on the lower end there. But I still like him to potentially get at least a half sack this week for DeMarcus Lawrence on Thanksgiving. So hopeful there. And then on the Washington side of things, Cody Barton designated to return from injured reserve. We don't know for sure if he'll play. At least I haven't seen anything specific to say that he is playing. If he does, I'm a little bit concerned, I guess, about potentially being eased back into lineups. It's kind of an average matchup for linebacker tackles. So I'm not in any rush to put Cody Barton in lineups this week, especially with all 32 teams playing. You should have better options to kind of wait and see what that usage is. But how you feel about the Washington IDPs here?
Well, linebacker wise, I'm with you. I not only because of how the how much they think they could use Cody Barton if he felt fully healthy and they felt like he could take a full complement of snaps, but does he get that role back? I mean, I think it's just a mess between all 3 of those linebackers. I can't clearly see how that's gonna play out this week in particular. It's a so matchup, like you said. I think with no one on bye, there's I'm trying my best to not start any 3 of these linebackers. Let's give it a week and see what happens. It's also a short week. So that's just one more piece of volatility that I just don't want to put on the fire here. Not when we have other options. We're not talking about any of these linebackers as being a top 5 or top 10 option. Right. So if you're just going to dip your hand in the pool and grab some random linebacker, hope to get 7 to 8 tackles out of, I'd rather have somebody with a higher floor and somebody I can kind of rely on. Somebody I do like this week is Cam Curl. I mean, John, you and I this offseason, we waxed poetically on Cam Curl's behalf, and we both look like geniuses right now because he is that top 5 or top 3 safety that we thought he would be. And I think this is a good matchup. I know Dallas throws it a lot, and they tend to produce a lot of action for their safeties. And in general, I mean, Curl's been putting up linebacker numbers, which we don't get as often as we used to back in the glory days of the single high safeties. But to me, I'm high on Curl this week. I don't know where you have him, but I'm really high on him this week.
Yeah, I got him as safety too. And like you said, we loved him coming into the year. We talked about him this offseason. So yeah, exciting to see him kind of delivering in the way exactly the way that we expected him to. So this has been a good thing for Curl. And like you said, Dallas giving up the fifth most tackles to the safety position. So a really nice matchup for Cameron Curl to come in and do some damage here. And Dallas also giving up the fifth most tackles to the cornerback position. So really like Benjamin St. Just for the Washington corners. He's been really like one of the most consistent producers for IDP points at the cornerback position. 52 tackles on the year, seventh most for among corners. He's also put up 15 pass breakups, which is second most. He's also added a sack to his totals, and yeah, I think he's locked in as like a CB1 option for this week and could be for the rest of the season as well, depending on the matchup for Benjamin St. Just. But other than that, yeah, I'm not interested in the Washington edge rushers without Chase Young and Montez Sweat. They're going against Tyron Smith and company, so it's a bad matchup for them. How about, I mean, on the interior, still like Jonathan Allen. I have him as like DT9 this week. Deron Payne in more of the DT2 range for me. So anybody else on Washington that stands out to you worth talking about?
No, I mean, I was going to mention the same two you just did. That it's when going across the defensive line, it helps to have talented players next to you. It helps you, have fewer double teams and triple teams. We see that now in LA with Aaron Donald. He's got no help. So what do you got to do? You're going to load up on him. But it's been interesting to see how Washington lost both of their premium edge rushers, but Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne are still wrecking shop there in the middle. They're still playing plenty of snaps. So I'm confident to keep rolling out both of those guys this weekend going forward. It seems like losing their top edge rushers hasn't really slowed them down any, and we're mostly relying on those guys for tackles anyway, and they seem to be doing plenty. And if this game goes the way it looks like it's going to go, I can see Dallas running the ball a ton, particularly in the second half, and Allen and Payne out there soaking up all that juicy IDP production. Just wait for it, because it might not come till the second half.
I'm with you. Yeah, that's a great call. All right, let's go to the Thursday night game. It is the 49ers at the Seattle Seahawks. Where do you want to start with this game?
Well, let's start with San Francisco. We know they run the ball a ton, and they are obviously they're one of the better teams in the league. But it has been interesting because you have to look closely. But even though they're a great offense, and even though they run the ball a ton, they actually don't put up great numbers for linebackers. You expect them not to put up great numbers for cornerbacks because they just don't throw it a ton. But they're really not that productive for linebackers, which is a little surprising, don't you think?
It is, yeah, because I feel like they've always been, one of the better matchups before. I'd have to go and look back. Like, I've always liked playing linebackers against the 49ers typically,
Right.
but this year, yeah, not as good. 20th most tackles to the linebacker position per game. So, yeah, Bobby Wagner, I mean, he's been excellent all year. So I still feel good about starting him. He's more like on the lower end of LB1 for me, like LB9. And Jordan Brooks is the one, I guess, who isn't necessarily getting a full-time role, although he has played a little bit more in recent weeks, but for whatever reason, that's actually hurt his production somehow. So he's like LB 25 for me this week. But yeah, surprisingly, like you said, San Francisco not giving up too much to the linebacker position, but they are giving up a lot to the safety position, second most tackles per game to the safety position. So I'm curious how you feel about Jamal Adams. He's technically considered questionable right now, but it does seem like he is going to play after missing last game. He's had really nice alignment this season, 40% of his defensive snaps in the box, but hasn't necessarily been great as far as production goes. He's been fine, but this feels like it could be a decent matchup for him to kind of get back on track here.
Yeah, I love the matchup. I mean, I think it always helps to not only it helps to kind of separate yourself from what you see on TV and look at the numbers. For example, everything we've been saying about the 49ers, I forgot to mention a second ago that the reason that those numbers are lower, I think, has to do with the fact that they are even though they're a great offense, they are a very slow offense. They run the 27th fewest, or 27th most plays in the game. So they just don't need to be on the field for very long, and so there's just not a lot of production on the other side. But then it is important to then picture what that game is going to look like. Picture Christian McCaffrey and some of these wide receivers, and obviously George Kittle coming out of the backfield or lining up in the slot. A lot of that sort of activity is right in Jamal Adams' wheelhouse. So I agree. I think he's got a higher floor this week than normal. It's a shame that we haven't seen this, this amazing pass rush upside that he used to carry, and maybe that will come back. But that's one of the things that made him such an elite safety before, was not only solid with tackles, but just producing some sort of big play almost every week. That hasn't really happened as much, but it's a great opportunity for him just to get his tackle floor raised this week, going against those offensive weapons and how they use them.
Yeah, I'm with you. And yeah, like you said, the 49ers, again, not running a ton of plays, but they also have like these explosive playmakers too, right? So they can score quickly and like get these huge plays at a time. So that also cuts down on their playing time. So yeah, but like you said, Jamal Adams should be at the focal point here for production, I would think. But another player who's been amazing this season is Devon Witherspoon. I'm curious how you feel about him, the rookie corner for the Seattle Seahawks this week.
Man, he's been great, right? It's there's a lot of debate about the whole rookie corner rule. How accurate that really is, and I did a bunch of research on this a couple of years ago, and it really has to be this amazing combination. But when it all locks up, you will definitely get that kind of like rookie corner blow up year. And all of those things are lining up for Witherspoon. He's playing every snap, obviously. He's a great player. He's playing at a high level, but people will still continue to test him. So he's been a really valuable asset, particularly in CB required leagues. Yeah, having said that, this is the week, right? This is the week where he's probably going to get 6 passes thrown his way, if even that, just because they don't throw it much, and they're just terrible getting production out to cornerbacks, right?
Yeah, last in the league as far as tackles to the cornerback position goes. So it's not a great matchup this week. I think most people who have been starting Witherspoon are probably just going to keep him locked into lineups, but I think just tempering expectations this week, like you said, because it isn't a great matchup. So as good as he's been, 55 tackles, 3 sacks, I think he's got a pick 6 in there as well. So just kind of tempering expectations for the rookie this week. He'll be fine rest of the season, but there are going to be matchups that aren't necessarily great for him. But other than that, Seattle, the only other player that I wanted to talk about was Boye Mafe. I have him as edge 19 this week. He should see more Colton McKivitz at right tackle this week instead of Trent Williams, which is a good thing for Boye Mafe. They do move him around a bit depending on the week, so I'd imagine they get him to avoid Trent Williams this week, who hasn't allowed a sack all year. Where McKivitz has given up 5. He's got a 59.9 pass blocking grade, which is 61st. So don't mind Boye Mafe this week in that edge 2 range, even though Brock Purdy's done a decent job avoiding sacks as well. And then on the San Francisco side of things, where do you want to start with the 49ers IDPs?
Well, I want to start actually with Fred Warner. On paper, this is a bad matchup, or a really bad matchup. But it's been nice to see that Warner, as phenomenal of a player as he is, usually doesn't put up massive tackle numbers just because of number one. Well, kind of part of what we're saying, like their defense is so good, but now that that their offense is slower and also they're 27th in plays per game. That's allowing the 49ers defense to be on the field a little bit more. It's been nice to see Warner hit that double-digit tackle mark more this season than I've seen in recent years, which is great because he's such a phenomenal player. It just stinks that we couldn't use him as often or really get to see that on the IDP side. But he's been much better this year, I think, partly for those reasons. This is a terrible matchup, but if I've got Fred Warner, just like if I've got Bobby Wagner on the other side of the ball, Wagner, I think, has had 9 tackles in all but 1 game. So we're going to talk about. I learned a lesson, a bad lesson last week, which we're going to talk about later. But I would tell anyone listening to always start your studs, right? Apparently, I don't take my own advice, but and this is one of those times that Warner's been putting up solid numbers no matter what. So guys like Wagner and Warner, I'm starting despite the bad matchup.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's not a great matchup, but I still have like Fred Warner LB7 and Greenlaw LB19. It's just so hard to sit these guys. They've been so good, so productive. It's maybe one of those ones where you're not targeting them in like prop bets or anything like that. But I do really like what Fred Warner's done this year. It's so hard to sit him because of that. But other than that, for the 49ers, Talanoa Hufanga lands on injured reserve. It looks like he's done for the year with the torn ACL. So Jair Brown, the third round rookie for them, is going to likely start for them. Not a great matchup. It's just kind of an average matchup for safety. So we'll see what Jair Brown does here in his first start. I'm assuming it's him and Deshaun Gibson out there for San Francisco. So I have him in more of like a safety 3 range for me, just to kind of wait and see what his production looks like, what his usage is here against the Seahawks. But anything else for the 49ers for you?
No, I think that's it. Just leaning on Warner when you can. Obviously, you're going to start, your edge rushers. Oh, the only thing I would say is Javon Hargrave has really been good. Everybody was wondering what that would be like when he shifted over to San Francisco. Would we see his snaps lowered and all that sort of stuff? He's had a really good season. This is a really bad matchup for him, not in terms of pass rush, but just in terms of production coming his way. Him sitting in the middle is, he has these weeks where he'll have 5 and 6 and 7 tackles. This could be one of those, 2 or 3 tackle weeks. I think just based upon the matchup, just not enough opportunity coming his way this week.
Yeah, that's fair. And yeah, I'm with you. I think, you're starting Nick Bosa as well. There's no real question about that. Like you said, start your studs. You don't have to worry about Nick Bosa. And Chase Young has been fairly solid. I feel good about him in like an edge 2 range as well. All right, let's go to the Miami Dolphins at the New York Jets. This is our Black Friday game. So let's start with, oh man, where do we start with this game? I'm going to go with just the Jets linebackers here, because it's not a great matchup going against Miami. They are allowing the 29th most tackles to the linebacker position, but again, as far as starting your studs go, CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams have both been like top 12 linebackers this year. They've been so productive. So CJ Mosley, for me at least, is locked into lineups. He's LB8. Quincy Williams more in the LB2 range this week, but still really like them quite a bit this week. There's not a ton to say about the Jets defense, but I'll be curious at your thoughts. Anybody that stands out to you?
Well, we were just talking about this with San Francisco, so I want to bring it up again. Miami, obviously the most prolific offense in the NFL. They are not good for IDP production. You would think that they would be, and it's a function of how their offense scores, right? They are a quick strike offense. They are not pounding the ball, getting 4 or 5 yards per run, grinding the clock out. That is not how their offense functions, and it won't function that way. And same for San Francisco. So sometimes you see high-powered offense and assume that means a lot of IDP production, but you need snaps. You need numbers of snaps on the field, and Miami's offense is so good that it tends to get on the field and then quickly off the field and kick a field goal before you even know it. I think what helps the linebackers for the Jets, and this has really been the case all year for them, is because this is such a good defense that they don't allow a lot of quick strike plays. So I'm not sitting either one of these guys. It's, as I said earlier, if they don't get 11 and 12 and 13 tackles like we've become used to, if they get 7 or 8 tackles this week, I just know that was more of a function of the Dolphins offense than their abilities. I'm mostly worried about the defensive line though, because man, it's hard to imagine, but if you watch the Dolphins offense, you'll see it. I mean, it's clear as day. They just don't pound the rock through the middle of a defensive line, like hardly ever. I think they have the worst production to opposing defensive linemen, if not the worst, very close to it. But they're averaging like 9 or 10 tackles per defensive line. That's 1 to 2 tackles per. And remember, the Jets rotate their defensive line a lot. I'm going to start Quentin Williams and just begrudgingly deal with the 3 tackles he gets. But
Right.
I can't start anybody else not against this offense.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you there. I have Quentin Williams, defensive tackle 7 for me, so it's lower for him than it
Yeah.
would usually be. The guards aren't great on Miami, but like you said, the production not necessarily available to him. So 30th most tackles to the defensive line position are the Jets, and Tua's done a nice job avoiding sacks as well. Really difficult matchup for the edge rushers, like you said. They rotate these guys quite a bit. They got Teron Armstead back a couple of weeks ago as well. He's been amazing at left tackle. He hasn't allowed a sack either, just 2 pressures allowed in 4 games. So guys like Jermaine Johnson for me, who would have the highest of the Jets edge rushers, is like edge 34 for me this week.
Yeah. How's it looking on Miami side for you?
Yeah, so Miami, God, they're a group that there's not a lot of players that I'm in love with right now for this matchup. Like David Long, like their linebackers are really low for me. Like Jerome Baker's the highest at LB 48, but he's just been so inefficient. 9.3% tackle efficiency on the year, which is well below average for the position. David Long is unranked for me. He's played fewer than 50% of snaps last week, and his snaps have been a concern this season. Miami giving up the fewest the Jets giving up the fewest tackles per game to the safety position as well. So that kind of hurts Javon Holland's potential there for me this week. The player that I like the most is Jalen Phillips, I think. All right. So Jalen Phillips is edge 7 for me this week. He's going up against the right tackle, Max Mitchell, who has a 49.8 pass blocking grade, which is 71st out of 85 qualifying offensive tackles. He's allowed 5 sacks. And we got Tim Boyle at quarterback as well for the New York Jets. So no idea what this offense is going to look like. Hard to imagine that it could be worse than what it was with Zach Wilson, but it could be. It's very possible as they make the QB change here to their 3rd stringer now. So Jalen Phillips is really the key one for me. Him, Bradley Chubb, Christian Wilkins, that defensive line I like, but the rest of the IDPs I don't love this week. How about you?
Same. Jalen Phillips, I think he's got 4 straight games with a sack. Looks like it should be a 5th straight game coming here soon. It's been great using Christian Wilkins almost every week, and I think names like Christian Wilkins and Jalen Phillips, particularly as well. He's been playing lately. I think people have been a little bit off of Bradley Chubb, and which I disagree with. I think I'm happy using Chubb this week. I'd rather use Jalen Phillips, but I think Chubb's playing well, and I'm happy to use him. I could even see him outproducing Phillips this week.
Yeah, I like it. I got Chubb edge 16 this week as well. So yeah, I'm with you. This is a really nice matchup for him to do some damage as well. All right, let's go to the Sunday slate now and talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cincinnati Bengals. Justin, where do you want to start with this game?
Well, let's start with what's going on in Cincinnati. So for those of you who don't know, Blake Martinez has decided to make another run at this. He's unretired. He was signed to the Carolina Panthers practice squad, and then just recently, Blake Martinez has been signed to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Cincinnati offense is going to be facing obviously the Steelers IDPs. There's a lot of question marks here. Number one, what is Cincinnati's offense going to look like without Joe Burrow? Right. So a lot of the stuff that we've got written down based on recent history, sometimes you just want to ball that up and throw it away because it's not going to look like a completely different offense, right? An offensive coordinator can't just throw everything out of the window. It doesn't work that way. But still, this will be a different offense that the Steelers will be facing. When they face them, will Blake Martinez be involved? Obviously, the Steelers have had terrible luck with injuries at the linebacker position. They've been leaning on Landon Roberts, a little Michael Walker there. They got Miles Jack. How does Blake Martinez fit into this? Are you Are you starting any of these Pittsburgh linebackers? And also remember, sorry, I'm not going to try to lead you here too much, but remember that the Pittsburgh linebackers don't play every down. That's just not how their defense, runs. So if this is not one of those defenses where you've got two linebackers playing 90% of the snaps. So given the Cincinnati offense and how different it might look, and given the question marks at linebacker for Pittsburgh, how are you looking at these four linebackers? How do you think this shakes out this week? And does Blake Martinez slash Miles Jack ever work their way in? How do you see that going?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we won't know obviously until we see it, but there's definitely like a pretty good chance that we'll see maybe Blake Martinez or Miles Jack, one of the two, kind of factor in here, because like you said, the Steelers, they don't necessarily like to roll out every down linebackers. We saw that even when Cole Holcomb was in the lineup. They were kind of forced to do it last week, right? Landon Roberts played 100% of the snaps, and Micah Walker played 84% of the snaps, and look, they lost the game. They did not. They probably don't feel great about that option, which is why they claimed Blake Martinez off the practice squad, why they signed Miles Jack out of retirement. So there's at least a chance that we see these guys kind of work in and use them kind of situationally, which is what they've been used to. I think Miles Jack probably gets the first crack at it, I'd imagine, just because he has that familiarity with the defense, but I don't expect him to play a ton of snaps. I'd still think that he plays maybe second most snaps at best among the Steelers' current linebackers right now. So I still feel the best about a Landon Roberts if I had to pick one. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot of question marks for this matchup and for what these linebackers are going to look like. So yeah, it's probably Roberts for me, and then I am trying to avoid the rest of the group.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat. And, remember that it's usually Minka Fitzpatrick who is the defensive play caller for them, but he's been banged up. So, and I don't know. I mean, I don't remember. Do you remember when Minka's coming back?
Supposed to be back this week. It seems like
Okay.
he's trending in the right direction that he'll be back this week. So we'll see.
So even another question mark. So for me, I want to avoid that entire mess. I mean, we just don't. I mean, as much as we want to try and predict the future, sometimes there are just too many question marks, and I would rather not lead anybody astray and take a blind guess and say, oh, I think Blake Martinez is going to have 11 tackles, when I just literally don't know. And if at all possible, I'm going to avoid this mess.
Yeah, I'm with you. And yeah, you're pretty much focusing on the main guys, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith. If Minka Fitzpatrick's active, you're probably starting him as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the Steelers. How about on the Bengals side of things? So I thought it was interesting last week. We've talked about it a few weeks in a row, really, about Nick Scott, and we've used the term, him circling the drain. It seemed like it was only a matter of time before he was going to get flushed and lose his starting job. And it seems like that happened last week with Jordan Battle playing the large majority of snaps. I think it was 80-something% or so, and had a really productive week. It's not necessarily the best matchup against the Steelers here, giving up the 26 most tackles to the safety position. But if you got to choose a guy between, say, Jordan Battle and Dax Hill, who's also been really great this year, do you have a preference there for the Bengals safeties this week?
Yeah, I'm leaning Dax Hill. I mean, I'm really excited about Jordan Battle. I mean, he had a great matchup last week and was able to cash in. Dax Hill's consistency, I think, is what I'm a little. If I had to pick one for this week, I want to see how Jordan Battle kind of settles into things. I'm glad that he's got that position, but if right now I had to pick one safety, I think I would go Dax Hill. He just a longer track record. I'm less worried about the fluctuations there, and obviously because this is such a bad matchup. Now, sometimes, often, when an offensive coordinator sees a new player, a rookie or a player who they think they can pick on, they'll pick on them all game. I don't necessarily think that'll happen with Jordan Battle, so I'm not willing to take that risk. I'd rather have Dax Hill, but Battle could be one of these guys who, for the next couple of weeks, racks up tons of tackles just based on that scenario. Outside of that, who else do you like from the Bengals? I mean, they got Logan Wilson. For me, I'm pretty much starting almost every week. It doesn't seem like a great matchup for him, though.
Yeah. Yeah, still starting Logan Wilson. I think I have him as LB 17 this week, so slightly lower than usual, but because of the matchup, but still feel fine putting him in lineups. But I think the guy that I'm probably most excited about on the Bengals is Trey Hendrickson, who has been really having like a career year in terms of PFF pass rush grade. He's got a 90.6 pass rush grade this season, which is fourth best at his position. That's led him to 9.5 sacks through 10 games. Draws a really great matchup here against Pittsburgh Steelers left tackle Dan Moore. Dan Moore owns a 30.3 pass blocking grade, which is the second lowest mark at his position among 85 qualifying offensive tackles. I think Hendrickson should be in a great spot here to kind of get another sack this week. Yeah, going against Kenny Pickett, who's been fine at avoiding sacks, but yeah, Trey Hendrickson's been awesome this year. Have him as edge 8, so excited about him this week.
Yeah, and he's picked up his tackles. I mean, there was the line on these two defensive ends were that Trey Hendrickson would get you sacks and nothing else, and Sam Hubbard would rack up tackles all day long, but nothing else. But they've become a more balanced duo. So it's been nice to see Hendrickson kind of become less, just at least in terms for IDP, less reliant on just getting sacks. He's picked up his tackle for as well. But yeah, great. I didn't realize the matchup was that great. That's a phenomenal matchup. So let's hopefully Hendrickson will come through for us.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping here. Then, all right, I think that's pretty much it for that game. Let's go on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Indianapolis Colts. And I guess the big news out of Indianapolis this past week was that Shaq Leonard was released. A surprise, I guess, to many, but he seemed to be pretty unhappy with his role there. He was playing strictly on early downs. Previously had been like a top 10 graded linebacker across the board before he got injured a couple years ago. Since then has really kind of struggled to get back to the same level of play. So I guess it's trying to figure out what this new Colts linebacker rotation is going to look like. And for me, I mean, I feel very comfortable with Zaire Franklin, obviously, but after that, it's EJ Speed and Segan Olubi. We've seen the Colts play games with us before with putting Segan Olubi as their every down player when Zaire Franklin missed a game, and not giving it to EJ Speed. So a little bit of hesitance as far as plugging EJ Speed into lineups right away for me, at least. So he comes in a little bit lower this week, and I'm not interested in putting him in starting lineups again, especially with all these teams available.
Yeah, with no buys, there's no reason. We were talking about this earlier, dipping your hand into a pool full of LB3s. I mean, there's so many out there that it doesn't make any sense to risk starting EJ Speed only to see that he played 32% of the snaps or whatever he's going to do. So I do like EJ Speed. So to me, I'm going to pick him up and put him on the bench and just let's see how this kind of percolates over the next couple of weeks. Shaq Leonard obviously had those had that run of injuries, and these injuries aren't like that he just pulled a hammy or he fractured his ankle and now it's back. These are injuries that were likely going to slow him down or sap him of some power heading in basically all year long. What's crazy is that his snaps were picking up, his production was picking up. I think he was, you could obviously tell me better than that, but overall grading wise, he looked like he was, not the elite player he once was, but he looked like he was playing solidly and he was picking up his snaps. And then this weird sequence of events, which I guess they all string together correctly, but it's like he was unhappy with his role. I think last week was one of the worst games I've ever seen him play. Was that, was he just out of it? Like just he was frustrated or whatever. After that game, he was told on Monday, he was told that he was being benched. And then right after that, he was released. A lot of salary, I think $6 or $7 million a year on his contracts, a couple more years at that. So I say all that to say that, I could see Leonard getting picked up by another team and finding a home, and I doubt would be an every down player, but if he ends up, and there's been a lot of injuries about Pittsburgh. I got to wonder if Pittsburgh was like, wait a minute, if they had just released this dude just a couple of days ago, we would have signed these other dudes off of the couch,
Yeah.
But Leonard might still have life in the NFL. I think this was more. They're not obviously not playing great right now. Get some younger players in there. They probably know they need to move on from him sooner rather than later. Yeah, I'm going to sit EJ Speed for this week. Let's see what happens, and then obviously let's see where Leonard lines. Aligns. I'm assuming he'll play again this season, but I just don't know where.
Yeah, so I gotta imagine somebody picks him up. There's a lot of injuries at the linebacker position right now as well. A lot of teams that can use another body in there, and like you said, probably don't expect him to be an every down player. But you never know. It depends where he lands and how they want to test him out and see what his capabilities are right now. But yeah, not overly excited about Shaq Leonard obviously being released, but we'll see where he ends up landing. I'm sure it'll be somewhere. Other than that, on the Colts, I mean, Julian Blackmon, solid safety too this week, even though it's not the best matchup. Kenny Moore, we've been starting pretty much every single week. That doesn't seem to matter. Defensive line, I mean, again, DeForest Buckner has been awesome. And then Kwity Paye, it hasn't been as good. He's more of a matchup dependent player for me. So this isn't a great matchup going against the Bucs pass blocking unit, who have been one of the better units in the league, and Baker Mayfield's done a nice job avoiding sacks. So not overly excited about the Indianapolis pass rushers outside of DeForest Buckner.
Yeah, and I think Pay's even banged up a little bit this week, so another reason to pivot from him. I remember early in the season, the Bucs were like hell bent on being a balanced offense, and they were running the ball despite the fact that they were going nowhere with it. And everyone who drafted Rachaad White was going nuts because it looked like this was going to be a great fit, and he just wasn't going anywhere, and they just kept at it and kept at it. Well, now it's working. Like now Rachaad White is doing well, and they continue to run the ball a good amount. They're not one of these teams that run it like 30%, 39, 42% of the time. They're trying to kind of be a nice balanced offense, so that is creating a lot of opportunity. And DeForest Buckner's out there a ton. So happy, I've got DeForest Buckner in the top 10 this week. I think it's a really good matchup for him.
Yeah, this is a nice spot for him for sure. And then let's go to the Tampa Bay side of things, because they had a pretty significant injury this past week with Lavonte David dealing with a groin injury. So he's considered questionable right now. They haven't ruled him out or anything like that, but feels more on the doubtful side, I'd imagine. I would be surprised if he plays. So Servassier Dennis was kind of the hot waiver wire pickup this week because of that. And could be interesting here in a full-time role. This is a rookie now that fits this defense pretty well. Like this is a blitz heavy defense. This is something that Dennis excelled at in college and had some strong tackle numbers as well, or as a really good run defender too. So I kind of like Servassier Dennis if Lavonte David can't go. We don't know for sure that he can, but I probably would like him a little bit more than Devin White, who's been really inefficient as a tackler this season. 9.1% tackle efficiency on the year for Devin White, which is the second lowest among off-ball linebackers who have played at least 50% of snaps, behind only Nicholas Morrow. So Devin White really, really struggling this year. But how about you? How do you feel about the Bucs linebackers?
Well, I've said that if I had a groin injury, I would be nowhere near questionable or doubtful. So, and we were talking about this earlier with Fred Warner. It's great to see Lavonte David have this, bounce back, at least for IDP. I mean, he's been playing at an elite level for a long time. This isn't about him playing better this year as it is a function of how they are using him this year. But it's just nice to use these great linebackers and actually get tons of production from them. It's been nice to see LD have a bounce back season for us. IDP, I'm hoping he'll be 45, get that groin all healed up, and I'll still be using him in my lineups for decades to come. The Dennis thing is interesting because I really like the Bucs safeties this week. I like both Ryan Neal and Antoine Winfield, and I think this is a good matchup against the Colts. And if Dennis is targeted heavily, or they tend to run at him and he is not up to the task, it's going to be Winfield and Neal who are going to be there to kind of clean up that mess. But even without that, I like both Winfield and Neal this week, particularly Winfield. How are you feeling about really about the Bucs secondary in general?
Yeah, I definitely love Antoine Winfield. I think I have him as safety 3 this week. Ryan Neal, I did not rank. He seemed to have been benched the week prior to last. I guess he was out. So I think they were using like D. Delaney, who's one of their corners, filling him in at safety. So I don't necessarily feel comfortable about starting Ryan Neal, just because those snaps had decreased pretty significantly for him. So he's the only one that I'm being concerned about. But love Antoine Winfield. I'm probably not messing around too much with D Delaney. And then Jamel Dean is likely out for as far as cornerbacks go. Carlton Davis is questionable, so it's like I think Zion McCullough and Christian Izzian. So it's pretty much Antoine Winfield for me as far as the Bucs secondary goes right now.
Yeah, I don't have any other cornerbacks going as well. I had assumed that Neal's lack of playing time was due to his thumb. Like basically, it was still bothering him, and so I know that I guess he's still questionable based on how that thumb is going to respond over the next day or two. So that's a good call. I might pivot away from him. I'm mostly focused on Antoine Winfield anyway, but Neal's been such a good player in that role if he's healthy. But I would say unless we get some report that he's fully healthy and ready to go, I'm with you. So I don't think his playing time was dipped for anything other than the injury, but that's one we'll look into. So, but definitely Winfield, we're happy about. So we move on to the Patriots and the Giants.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go to New England at New York. Where do you want to start with these two teams?
Well, let's start with the Giants. The Giants IDPs. New England's been interesting. Obviously, we are still not 100% sure. At least is the last I'd heard. We're not 100% sure who the Patriots will be starting at quarterback. But I'm not sure it matters too much. They are on the opposite end of the pace spectrum. Although they're not an efficient offense, they are at least fast. And the Giants, they've given up a ton of yards per game. Obviously, they've had some terrible games, matchups against elite offenses like Dallas. I feel like the Giants feel like they face Dallas every other week. They're like, again, I swear to God, we just played these guys, right?
Yeah.
So if New England can get off the mat and get their offense heading in the right direction, I think this could be a good matchup for a couple of our Giants players. Kayvon Thibodeau, for example, I think is somebody that I'm feeling comfortable starting. Xavier McKinney, man, he's been on fire lately. He's got the third most tackles of any defensive back in the league, and I think he's had three games back to back of double-digit tackles. So I'm probably going to start him. I'm not expecting double-digit tackles because it's not a great matchup. But I think those guys I'm pretty comfortable starting with. Who do you like on the Giants defensive side?
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you. The same guys there. I mean, Bobby Okereke, he's LB10 for me this week. I like Thibodeau, like you said. I have him as edge 12, so he's still in that edge 1 range right now because of the playing time, and not necessarily because of the pass rush metrics, but more due to the matchup this week. And Dexter Lawrence as well. Dexter Lawrence has been awesome. He's DT4 for me this week. The Patriots pass blockers have not been great, and we'll see who's at quarterback. It might be Mac Jones. I know they've kind of been going back and forth on who's going to start there, and pulling guys from games and putting Bailey Zappi in. So we'll see what happens with the New England quarterback situation, but I think you nailed all the ones that I'm interested in as well. So yeah, let's talk about the New England IDPs. And again, probably a limited list of guys that we're overly excited about this week here for these guys. But Juwan Bentley is questionable still with a hamstring injury. He missed week 10 before their bye week. So we'll see if he's able to go. If not, it would be Jelani Tavai who fills in and like Mac Wilson. But it really would only be Tavai that you're playing if you have to start anybody from them. But anybody else on New England that you're particularly excited about this week?
Come on, John. You know my disdain for New
Yeah.
England IDPs. No, has nothing to do with them. It has to do with their coach and how he just
Yeah.
randomly puts them in random places. So no, thank you. I want none of that. I will take some Tavai. I do have Tavai in a couple leagues. And I'm definitely going to start him this week. But outside of that, no, thank you.
Yeah, I like Kyle Duggar. That would be the only other one for me. It's even hard. Like it's a great matchup for their pass rushers, like guys like Dietrich Wise and Christian Barmore and Josh Uche. But again, like playing time, like you said, is not ideal at all for these guys. So it's really kind of like a whack-a-mole as far as trying to pick your IDP that's going to get a sack for them this week. But yeah, it's a great matchup. If you have them, maybe you could play them if you're in need of a desperation play there. But you just don't love the playing time of that. It creates a lot of inconsistency, even in great matchups.
Yeah. You want to head to the AFC South?
Let's do it. Jacksonville Jaguars at the Houston Texans. So let's start with the Texans IDPs and specifically their linebackers, because we know obviously Denzel Perriman suspended for 2 games. And last week we saw Blake Cashman have a massive game. He played 100% of snaps, delivered 19 tackles, a sack. He had a pass breakup in there. So again, great matchup for them. 4th most tackles to the linebacker position Jacksonville's allowing. So Blake Cashman, we assume, is going to be their LB1 here while Denzel Perriman is out, and probably after that, we'll see what happens. But Christian Harris also played 100% of snaps. Less confident in him, only because Henry 2020, I'm used to calling him Hanky Two Toes. He's kind of lost his nickname as he's lost playing time, but
Right.
it's just easier to say. But yeah, we'll see. He probably mixes in. He's coming off a concussion where he's missed, I think, a couple weeks in a row now. So they had to play Corey Littleton last week. So that's probably why Christian Harris played an every down role. So I'd imagine Cashman is the lone every down player, and Harris and Tuoto'o kind of mix in a little bit. I don't know that Christian Harris is going to be an every down linebacker here again this week. Do you have any other different read on that situation?
No, same thing. I'm happy to use Cashman for one more week, and Jacksonville obviously is a good matchup for your LBs. But I don't want anything to do with that secondary linebacker role. I mean, the only thing I would be a little interested in is if Toto doesn't end up clearing concussion protocol. That clears things up a little bit, obviously. But for all the reasons we've been saying in terms of the number of players, this is that position is not someone you're expecting to get 10, 12, 15 tackles out of. So why not just pick somebody who has solid playing time if you can. Happy to use Cashman, though. Jalen Petre is another interesting one. I mean, this is a guy we've talked about all offseason. He had just everything in the world go right for him last year in terms of being on a defense that nobody in front of him could seemingly stop anything. They were on the field a whole bunch. The Houston offense was terrible. He was the runaway DB1. Now their Houston offense is pretty damn good. So he's not seeing the field as much. They're playing better up front. So Petre's kind of settled into a 4, 5, 6 tackle guy. But this isn't a great matchup for him. So I'm okay to use him. But for me, I think what we saw last week is that Blake Cashman is fully capable of handling things up front there, at least for another game or so. So I'm not expecting this to be a double-digit game for Jalen Petre. Those games are basically already in his rearview mirror, and this game doesn't look to be any change from that. Where do you have Petre? Is he? Do you think I've got that right, or do you have him higher?
No, I'm 100% with you. He's really been kind of more of a matchup dependent IDP option for me this season.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, it's not a good matchup, 28th most tackles to the safety position. So Jalen Petre safety 29 for me this week, right? Everything you said is exactly why. He super efficient as a rookie safety, 13% tackle efficiency, 147 tackles, right? But yeah, new coaching staff, different personnel on the field, better offense for the Texans. Regression was inevitable, but it's really hit him hard this week. 7.8% tackle efficiency, which is not only below average for his position, but ranks tied for 71st among defensive backs who have played at least 50% of the defensive snaps. So yeah, don't love Jalen Petre this week. He's really just going to be kind of that matchup dependent safety for me for the rest of the season, really.
Yeah. What about their defensive line? I've been enjoying Jonathan Grenard's resurgence. He's finally healthy again. He's been fun to watch, as well as that rookie Will Anderson.
Yeah. Grenard has been great. And Will Anderson, I like quite a bit this week as well. Like I have him as I think edge 21. He's going up against Anton Harrison for the most part. Anton Harrison 53.1 pass blocking grade, which is 69th among offensive tackles. And yeah, he's been heating up a little bit, right? 2 sacks in his last 3 games. He's been able to take advantage of good matchups. He had 7 pressures last week versus Arizona. Trevor Lawrence does have a tendency to take sacks at an above average rate. So like this matchup a fair bit for those Texans edge rushers.
How about on the Jacksonville side? I think it's a pretty good matchup for the linebackers, right?
Yeah, so 10th most tackles to the linebacker. So nice matchup. I have Foye Oluokun. He's LB1 for me this week. He's just been excellent all year. I think he's even LB1 as far as scoring goes in most formats. But Devin Lloyd has also been awesome. He's been an every
Yeah.
down player. So you like to see that from him in year 2 here, especially after that kind of tumultuous rookie season where he was up and down and then benched and losing snaps to Chad Muma. Hopefully that's in the rearview mirror now for Devin Lloyd. So you feel pretty good about putting him into lineups as well. Like again, it's a matchup, or it's a week where we have a ton of options. So he's not necessarily going to be as high for me as he usually is, but still in that kind of LB2 range. He's if you got him, you're probably starting him.
Yeah, and it's been man. We were just talking earlier about how rare it is. It seems to have 2 highly fantasy relevant linebackers on the same team these days, and that's certainly the case. But with Jacksonville, we get that. We get both. Both of our linebackers are playing every snap, both of them. And, this reminds me of the old Jacksonville Jaguars linebacking core, the Telvin Smith and Paul Beslesny and those guys where every week you had 2 linebackers who were fantasy relevant. And it's really hard to come by. And I think it's made people shy away a little bit from Devin Lloyd because we're just not used to having 2 linebackers create double-digit tackles every week. But that's certainly the case. I mean, Lloyd's been obviously not as good as Foye has been, but man, to have him as your LB2 is a great place to be. So yeah, and good matchup. Obviously, long history here between these 2 AFC South rivals. Anybody else on the Jags that you like?
As far as liking, I mean, Darius Williams at cornerback, I like quite a bit for them, but Josh Allen is a little bit lower for me this week. He's been high for me all season. I really like Josh Allen quite a bit, but he's edge 9, so I'm still starting him. But it's a really tough matchup against Laramie Tunsil. Laramie Tunsil, 79.9 pass blocking grade, 13th among offensive tackles. He has allowed 4 sacks, which is nice. The other thing, too, is the Texans are giving up the 7th most tackles to the defensive line position, too. So that's kind of what keeps Josh Allen in that edge 1 range for me, is that there is still potential for sacks and tackles as well, even though he hasn't been nearly as efficient of a tackler this year, which is kind of a bummer considering it was one of his strengths at least the past 2 seasons. So still like Josh Allen, but don't love Josh Allen this week, I guess I should say.
Yeah, and obviously there's always volatility with a role like that, and also just I think with Tunsil, I know has had a few little bumps and bruises, but man, he's when he's on, he's a brick wall. So again, with everybody going this week, if you've got another edge rusher, you might want to go that way. But I at least like the fact that he's got a solid tackle floor that really comes. Those are all of my favorite, edge rushers are going to have that tackle floor where, Max Crosby doesn't have to get a sack. He can rack up 7 tackles and you'll be totally fine with it. Right. So, and Josh Allen's obviously not quite on that level, but he's done it before. I mean, he's certainly racked up a ton of tackles. And this could be one of those games where if he doesn't get you that sack or doesn't get you that, he can get you maybe a tackle for loss or 2, 4, 5, 6 tackles. This is that kind of game that could happen for him. Just I'm not expecting a ton of pass rush wins against Laramie Tunsil.
Yeah, definitely going to be harder to come by this week. But that's pretty much it for the Jacksonville IDPs for me. So let's do a quick ad break here. And this one is from our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a skill based, real money daily fantasy sports game. How does it work? You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they will go more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you could win up to 25 times your money on any entry. So actually, right now, if you go onto Prize Picks, there is a special offer that allows you to take the over on Christian McCaffrey's combined rushing and receiving yards total, which is set at just 0.5 yards. So it's a special offer for Thanksgiving. Playing with the 49ers playing Thursday night versus the Seahawks, you really don't need to think too hard about that one. You just take the offer and then you can add to it. If you're looking for maybe some IDP prop bets to add to that, I like Deron Bland over 4.5 tackles against the Washington Commanders also on Thursday. Washington top 10 in giving up tackles to the cornerback position. They're pass heavy offense. So we like that for Deron Bland. And then even DeMarcus Lawrence over 0.25 sacks. We talked about him earlier in the show as well. DeMarcus Lawrence top 10 pass rush grade going up against Sam Howell and the Washington Commanders, that Dallas defensive line has been able to generate sacks and pressures at a very, very high rate. So there should be some opportunity for Lawrence to at least get a half sack this week. So yeah, at Prize Picks, you aren't competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections. Go to prizepicks.com/PFF fantasy and use code PFF fantasy for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/PFF fantasy. Use code PFF fantasy for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, Justin, let's head to the Carolina Panthers at the Tennessee Titans. Where would you like to start with these two teams?
Well, let's start with the Tennessee Titans defense. Azeez Al-Shaair, he's been a revelation for us this year, been tearing it up. And Jack Gibbons, for a while there, was not really matching him toe to toe, but hanging in there, as a really solid LB2 on that team. But it seems like things are kind of slipping there for Gibbons. What do you see between these two linebackers and this matchup against Carolina?
Yeah, it's Al-Shaair for me, and then that's pretty much it. I'm not playing around with Jack Gibbons this week. Him and Monty Rice both played 41% of snaps this past week, and Gibbons has been losing snaps in each of the past 2 weeks. So it seems like he's kind of on his way out as well, and not somebody that we should have in starting lineups in the majority of IDP leagues this week. So I'm not putting those guys in there other than Azeez Al-Shaair. And then really for Tennessee, I mean, the other really strong matchup is Roger McCreary, their cornerback there, because the Panthers are giving up the most tackles to the cornerback position this season. So really like Roger McCreary as a potential cornerback play this week. And if you're looking for, a streamer, he's been solid, so he might not necessarily be available, but somebody that we can plug into lineups and expect at least some decent tackle production there. I think I have him as CB3 this week.
Yeah, I mean, the Panthers just do not run the ball very much. They run it 38% of the time. They give up a ton of production to those cornerbacks. Fairly fast offense, fairly efficient offense. So, and McCreary, yeah, as you were saying, McCreary's been solid all season. He moves around enough and is involved enough in what little run game he will see. So I definitely like McCreary this week as well. Because of that lack of run game for the Panthers, I am concerned about some of these Tennessee IDPs. I'm still going to start Jeffrey Simmons if I don't have better options, but I don't know. Where do you have Simmons this week? I feel like this is not a great matchup for him just based on volume alone.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have Simmons at he's DT3 for me. Yeah, more it's just so hard to sit him at, and there's a few tougher matchups here for defensive tackles. Like yeah, so he's still in that must start range for me. Like again, especially DT required leagues, right? You just don't sit a guy like that, at least for me. So it's again not the best matchup, but it is a decent matchup, at least for pass rushing, right? So when he does get those opportunities against that Carolina offensive line, who have allowed a lot of pressure, Bryce Young, who's taken a lot of sacks, right? I think that's where he kind of makes up for it, as opposed to getting tackles. But yeah, I just like the potential there for Simmons as a pass rusher, so that's why he's DT3.
Yeah, same thing here. I've got him. I've got him in my top 10 for defensive tackles. And For me, it's going to be more about his big play potential. I mean,
Mhm.
this doesn't look like a 6 to 8 tackle game for him, but he doesn't need that, right? He just needs to get back to Bryce Young, who's still holding on to the ball too long. So, and as we know, with our particularly DT required leagues, I wouldn't sit him anyway, right? You just don't sit a guy like that. Any defensive tackle who's got that kind of tackle floor and is playing that often and is that, we've seen it time and time again. If a guy's got, just because it's a bad matchup, sometimes we don't give enough credit to the player's talent, right? And it's one thing if we just know they're not going to be able to stay on the field very long and they're just not going to get many opportunities. But Simmons is going to get an opportunity with every single snap. Run or pass, he will have an opportunity to create production, and we've seen him come through in both good and bad matchups. So yeah, that's why I was just curious if you thought, because like I said, he's the guy for me that I'm going to start. I'm not going to start anybody else off that line. I was wondering if you thought he was also a must start, and it sounds like we're in agreement on that. Yeah, I'm not sitting Simmons, even though it's not a ton of tackle opportunity there this week.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's go to the Carolina Panthers IDPs here, and going against a stingy offense in the Tennessee Titans as far as giving up production to IDPs. So, anybody here specifically that you want to start with as far as the Carolina IDPs go?
Yeah, I mean, there's really not much there. We're just talking about production, right? I mean, Tennessee, I think they're 31st in pace and 32nd in plays per game. So, I'm obviously going to start, Frankie Louvu. He's a must start every week for me. Other than that, I'm going to probably avoid, I would. I wouldn't mind starting a couple of their safeties. I think Jeremy Chin's coming back off of IR this week. I think, is that right?
Yeah.
And he wasn't an every down player for them when he went out anyway. But I just don't see a lot here other than Frankie Louvu. What about Brian Burns? How's he looking for you?
Yeah, so Brian Burns has been okay this year, and not amazing, and not necessarily taking that big step that we were kind of hoping for him. But I do have him as edge 17 this week. He's going up against what we think is going to be Dylan Radins at right tackle. So Dylan Radins 42.3 pass blocking grade on the year. He's kind of played all over the offensive line this year and just hasn't been good no matter where he's lined up. There's also Andre Dillard on the other side at left tackle. We expect him to line up, and he's been really bad as well. 46.0 pass blocking grade, and has actually allowed 10 sacks, which is the most in the league as well. So it's a great matchup for somebody like Brian Burns going against a Dylan Radin specifically, even though his pass rush metrics haven't necessarily been amazing relative to expectations. Like I said, for Brian Burns, but still like him a decent amount this week to plug him into most lineups.
Yeah, and if there's anything that Tennessee might be able to do, they've been trying to create some offense with Tajay Sharp getting more and more involved. So this could be one of those games again, and that's also why I like Frankie Louvu as well. But on paper, this does not look like a good matchup for any of your any of your Carolina IDPs. We're obviously starting Frankie Louvu, but just the fact that they're finally trying to get something going allows me to consider maybe starting a couple of their safeties as well. But I'm not going to be happy about it, as I was saying earlier.
Yeah, it is. It's hard to be excited about them. Von Bell, like I have him as safety, I think 26 this week.
Yeah.
So not, looking to start him if I can afford to, but not everybody has a better option that they can plug in there this week. So yeah, Tennessee giving up the second fewest tackles to the safety position per game. So that's kind of why he comes in a little bit lower this week. Justin, I really appreciate your time. It is a holiday, so I understand that you've got plans, you've got things to do, you've got family time to spend over there for Thanksgiving, and you are on a time crunch here. So I am going to let you go because I know you got things to do. But I just want to say I can't thank you enough for your time and for coming on here and talking some IDP with me. It is always a pleasure, and I really do appreciate it.
Jonathan, man, thanks so much for having me. Sorry we couldn't finish on. I got kitchen duties. We got lots of food to prep and make, and I gotta hold my end of the bargain up. But it was great. It was great fun to talk to you. Let's do this again soon. I want to get through a full episode for you before the end of the year. Hey, I know you've already celebrated Thanksgiving, but enjoy the break. Enjoy all the football we're going to get to watch over the next couple of days, my man.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And before you go and do some dishes and some cooking and everything, please let everybody know where they can find you and your work as well.
Well, besides finding me in the kitchen, they can find me on Twitter at Down with IDP. I'm one of the fantasy analysts on the IDP side for fantasypoints.com. Hit me up on Twitter. I'm around there. And other than that, come check out fantasypoints.com. John, it was a pleasure, man. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Yeah. And have a happy Thanksgiving. Thanks again.
Yes, sir.
All right. See you later. All right, let's move to the New Orleans Saints at the Atlanta Falcons as I kind of go solo here. We'll see if I can manage. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this goes here. I'm pretty sure we can manage here, getting these games done here and wrapped up for Thanksgiving. The New Orleans Saints at the Atlanta Falcons is the next game, and we'll start with the Atlanta Falcons IDP. So for me, I think I want to start with the Atlanta linebackers because this is a really, really nice matchup here for Nate Landman specifically. I have him as LB14 this week. We've seen him actually play a true full-time role now in back-to-back weeks heading into the team's week 11 bye. So imagine that continues here in week 12. He's played really well so far this season. For anybody that's paid attention to his PFF grades, an 80.1 defensive grade this season, which is 17th among linebackers. And Landman has delivered a really strong tackle efficiency as well at 15%. He's done that throughout the season. It's a top 15 mark at his position. So again, we really like the matchup here for Nate Landman going against the Saints, who have yielded the second most tackles per game to the linebacker position. It's a nice matchup for Caden Ellis as well. I struggle with Caden Ellis. He hasn't been nearly as efficient as Landman, delivering a tackle efficiency that's basically well below average for the year, 10.9%. That kind of pushes him outside of that top 24 for me, despite the favorable matchup. He's LB 29. It's just, I have a hard time trusting Caden Ellis a little bit this week, even though it is a good matchup. But if you have him and you don't have, great options or guys that are on the fringes of that full-time role, you could definitely be plugging him in there. At the safety position, not a whole lot to talk about here. The Saints giving up the 13th most tackles to the safety position. So Jesse Bates I have inside the top 12 as usual, and Richie Grant is more in the safety 2 range. Other than that, I mean, the Saints giving up the 9th most tackles to the defensive line. Atlanta doesn't have a lot of stars on their defensive line, but David Onyemata has been really good this year. It's a potential revenge game here going against his former team. So David Onyemata, I think, is definitely a startable option in DT required leagues. You can do worse than putting in David Onyemata in those DT required leagues. So in more of that DT2 range for me. All right, let's go to the New Orleans Saints IDPs. And I do want to talk about their linebackers first as well, because again, this is another favorable matchup. The Atlanta is giving up the 7th most tackles to the linebacker position this season on a per game basis. But the Saints linebackers have been incredibly inefficient this year. So Pete Werner specifically, he's playing an every down role, but just continues to deliver inefficient tackle performances on a weekly basis, right? So heading into their bye week last week, he had given up 4 straight games of single-digit tackle efficiency for Pete Werner. So the average is 13.4% for linebackers. He is in the single digits in 4 straight games, 10.6% on the year for Pete Werner. Demario Davis, 10.5%. So both of these guys really poor as far as tackle efficiency goes. I like Demario Davis more than Pete Werner this week as LB 26, Pete Werner LB 39, but don't love them. Davis has at least been a little bit better as of late, so that does help him and at least give some hope for him going forward. Don't love the safeties necessarily, even though it is a stronger matchup. Marcus May, Tyrann Mathieu have just kind of been average safeties as far as IDP production goes, so they're not must starts by any means. Paulson Adebo is their top corner that I would be putting into lineups. He's been the every down guy. He's CB20 for me. I do like this matchup for the defensive line guys for the Saints. Carl Granderson specifically, I have his edge 15 and Cameron Jordan as edge 27. So Jordan, he's been slightly better this year compared to last year, but still a very volume dependent edge rusher at this stage of his career. It's a nice spot for him to get tackles, though, even though he hasn't been amazing there either. So that's why he's kind of outside that top 24, but just on the fringe of that edge 2-3 range for me. But Carl Granderson been a much better pass rusher and tackler this season. So edge 15 for me for that Saints edge defender. All right. The next game on the list, as I write down the timestamp here, is the Los Angeles Rams at the Arizona Cardinals. So starting with the Rams IDPs, and I'll just kind of go through in the same kind of order for the rest of these games here, since I'm doing it by myself, and just to kind of create some consistency for me, and so I don't lose my mind talking to myself. But starting with the Rams linebackers, Ernest Jones is really the only one that we're interested in, right? So Ernest Jones is LB5 for me this week. He's coming off a week where he had double-digit tackles. He had a half sack in there, every down role, obviously, and that was in his return from injury. He missed week 10. So I like that quite a bit for Ernest Jones. Ernest Jones, that it's promising that he's going to remain in that every down role. I know when he was dealing with injuries before, he was kind of seeing some limited snaps, but first week back from injury there, right away, he was good to go to 100% role and delivered a very nice IDP production game. Other than that, they're safe. The Cardinals giving up the 7th most tackles to the safety position. So these aren't like, you're not overly excited about a lot of the Rams safeties. Quentin Lake was somebody that had a strong game last week. He's playing more of their slot corner role, so not necessarily considered a safety, even though he might have that designation on most fantasy platforms. But yeah, other than that, the Cardinals kind of stingy to opposing IDPs for cornerbacks. They're 28th, and for defensive line, they're also 28th. So guys like Byron Young, who's really volume dependent, but has been really efficient with his opportunities. He's still the low end of edge 2 range for me. And then Aaron Donald we're starting, but not necessarily starting like a Michael Hoyt Hecht. I do it every time. Hoyt Hecht. Doesn't matter what his name is. We're not probably starting him in most leagues. On the Arizona Cardinals side of things, we have Kaiser White lands on injured reserve. So this leaves basically Josh Woods and Chris Barnes. This is maybe one of those kind of linebacker needy teams that Shaq Leonard could be of interest to, but they're not like making a playoff push or anything like that. So you don't necessarily have to add somebody like that. They may just very well stick with Josh Woods and Chris Barnes here down the stretch. Josh Woods did play the 100% snap role once Kaiser White went down last week. Typically, this has been a more of a one linebacker team here. So Chris Barnes playing that LB2 role, likely to be in that 65 to 70% of snap range. So Josh Woods, I have him a little bit lower this week. It's not a great matchup for linebacker production. The Rams giving up the 25th most tackles to the linebacker position. So Josh Woods, in a week where we have so many options, he's like LB32 for me this week. So he's in that LB3 range. Chris Barnes, probably avoidable this week if you can. Safeties, we still like Budda Baker, Jalen Thompson. If you've been starting those guys, you're putting them into lineups. The Rams are giving up the 6 most tackles to the cornerback position. They don't have like amazing corners by any means for IDP, but Marco Wilson has been somebody that has had production in the past. So he's CB21 for me this week. And then outside of that, it's a decent matchup against an offensive line that struggles. So, but the Cardinals defensive line also struggles. So somebody like BJ Ojulari, more of like an edge 4. I know he got the sack last week and he had I guess was 2.5 the week before that, but we're not necessarily banking on that production to repeat week to week, especially for a player whose pass rush metrics aren't necessarily that encouraging right now. You're just really kind of hoping there that he can get home, but there should be better options for you. All right, let's go to the Cleveland Browns at the Denver Broncos next. And I'm just going to get a sip of my water here so my throat doesn't dry out. And I'm back. Let's talk about the Browns and the Broncos. So we have a really nice matchup here for the Denver Broncos linebackers. And I'm going to change the slide here so people can see on YouTube. The Browns are giving up the most tackles to the linebacker position on a per game basis. And of course, the Broncos have Alex Kingleton at linebacker. So he's LB6 for me this week. Interestingly enough, he has a 15.6% tackle efficiency, which is also sixth among linebackers who have played at least 50% of snaps. I know it's not the 21% that it was last year, which was far and away the best mark, but still very comfortably above average. And it's a great matchup. So love Kingleton to show why he is named Kingleton this week against the Cleveland Browns. Josie Jewell, I have lower. So Josie Jewell is LB38 for me this week. Again, we got a plenty of every down linebackers to choose from this week. Josie Jewell has not been an every down linebacker, he played just 74% of snaps last week. Not ideal for that potential for production there. So we could keep Josie Jewell out of lineups for the most part. Again, if you have him, you don't have a lot of other options. It's a great matchup if you want to put him in, but there's plenty of options out there right now. The Browns also given up the 8th most tackles to the safety position. Kareem Jackson gets a sussy again. This one is a 4-game suspension, so he is gone. If PJ Locke is healthy, he would be the guy to kind of step in for Kareem Jackson. We know Justin Simmons is there, but that second safety position is open. PJ Locke is the next man up, but he is questionable. He missed last game with injury as well. So if he can't go, it's Delarin Turner-Yell. And Turner-Yell has been very efficient with his opportunities, 13.5% tackle efficiency, which is third best among safeties who have played at least 25% of snaps. So could be a sneaky nice play there in a very strong matchup for somebody like a Turner-Yell, who nobody's ever heard of. Going to the cornerback position, Jaquan McMillian, we liked him a lot last week. Didn't deliver the tackles that we expected, but did get a forced fumble and a pick in there, which helped. But just 65% of snaps. So you got to be careful there. He's been good, but more of a deeper play, deeper leagues only. So he's CB 30 for me this week. The other thing that the Browns are giving us is the most tackles to the defensive line position. So Zach Allen specifically stands out as somebody that gets one of the best tackling matchups for defensive linemen this week going against the Browns. They've yielded 23.8 tackles per game to the position on the year. And that number has been even higher in the past 3 games, getting up to 29.7 tackles per game since week 9. So Allen playing more than any defensive lineman on Denver, 550 defensive snaps, which is 82% of the defensive snaps this season. He's 5th on the team in total tackles. Really like Zach Allen this week in that DT1 range for DT required leagues. On the Browns side of things, Anthony Walker dealt with a hamstring injury. He's questionable. Probably aren't going to see him this week. So Sione Takitaki, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, these guys, again, where we can afford to avoid them, we're avoiding them. It's just not worth it trying to figure out these Browns linebackers. They rotate these guys a ton, so playing time isn't consistent. And again, the most man-heavy defense in the NFL as well, or at least top 5. They're the most man-heavy defense in the NFL. Was getting them confused in my head with the Cowboys there for a second, but play a ton of man coverage, so that hurts tackle efficiency as well. So we're trying to avoid Takitaki and JOK if we can. And Grant Delpit, not the best matchup for him, 25th most tackles to the safety position for that the Broncos are giving up, but still like Delpit a ton. His alignment, his usage in the box is as ideal as we can ask for the position. So he's safety 9 for me this week. Other than that, Myles Garrett is, again, he's locked into lineups. I think I have him as edge 2 this week. Russell Wilson has the 9th worst pressure to sack conversion rate in the league. Despite his offensive line being decent doesn't matter for somebody like Myles Garrett. He is the most dominant pass rusher in the NFL. And probably going to get himself a sack again this week in his quest for Defensive Player of the Year. All right, let's keep it rolling. Kansas City Chiefs at the Las Vegas Raiders is next up, and we'll start with the Kansas City Chiefs IDP. So I don't have a ton to say about as far as this group goes. It's not a great matchup across the board against the Raiders here. So the Raiders are giving up the 27th most tackles to the linebacker position. I still like Drew Tranquil, and I probably like him more than I should this week, if that makes sense. So I have him as LB15. It's not a great matchup. It hasn't necessarily been this amazing tackler. He comes up with some big plays every once in a while. I might be able to afford to move Drew Tranquil down a little bit in my next update of the rankings here now that I'm kind of thinking about it. So LB15 might be a little high considering some of the guys around him, but that's where I have him right now. He's an every down player, which is all that you can ask for our linebackers here. We just want them to be efficient, and he's been just under average as far as tackle efficiency goes. Willie Gay, not as interested. LB 47 for me. He is not an every down player, but he did overtake Leo Chanel after Leo Chanel had played ahead of him a couple weeks as Gay was dealing with the back injury. So the bye week helped him get healthy and get back in that LB2 spot. Just realized I didn't put the timestamp down for this game, but I will find it. Don't worry. All right, let's go to the safeties for Kansas City. Don't love the safeties. Justin Reid is safety 34. He's the highest for me. He's the only full-time safety for the Kansas City Chiefs, but not playing an every down role, so we don't love that. But guys like Trent McDuffie, L'Jarius Sneed, we are very high on. It doesn't really matter the matchup. These guys have been excellent all season long. We saw Trent McDuffie get 2 sacks last week as well. So he's CB7 for me. L'Jarius Sneed is CB11. You're pretty much playing these guys. You can afford to mix and match at the cornerback position if you have a lot of options off the waiver wire or on your bench or whatever. But for the most part, these guys aren't leaving lineups. And the same thing goes for Chris Jones on the defensive line, defensive tackle 6 for me this week. Aiden O'Connell is giving up sacks at a pretty high rate here, among the top 10 in the league at his position, but the Raiders offensive line has been surprisingly solid. So Chris Jones obviously coming off a 2-sack game. We'll see if he could do it again. I mean, he's not leaving your lineup anyway, so it doesn't really matter that he's DT6 or DT1 for me. That's just where I have him this week. George Karlaftis is edge 24 as well. So right on the brink there of that edge 2 range. But that is pretty much the Kansas City Chiefs. So we can talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. And again, starting at the linebacker position, Robert Spillane I have as LB30 this week. As you hear my son screaming upstairs for some reason, this is his time of the day to scream, but maybe doesn't like the ranking of Robert Spillane here at LB30 because he's been so good this year. But has he been that good? I don't know. He's had 3 sacks, 3 interceptions. That has definitely boosted his point total. But really 12% tackle efficiency. So again, it's even lower than what we talked about with Drew Tranquil. So that's kind of why I feel like I might be a little bit too high on Drew Tranquil. He's kind of in the same boat as Robert Spillane a little bit for me. Slightly better, but doesn't have necessarily the big plays that Spillane had so far this year. We can't expect those big plays to repeat. So that's where Spillane comes down the ranks a little bit for me. And going against the Chiefs, who are giving up the 19th most tackles to the linebacker position. So below average matchup there. So nothing to be too excited about. And Divine Diablo, not an every down player. So he's LB 52, somebody to avoid this week. As far as their safeties go, we know that Marcus Epps left last game with an injury. If he can't go again, Isaiah Polamau would be the next man up. Trayvon Merrick is in there as well, but I just wanted to say Isaiah Polamau apparently. So I don't have him ranked just yet because Marcus Epps hasn't been ruled out, but just another name to consider in those deeper leagues if you're looking for a safety option. Kansas City is also giving up the 8th most tackles to the cornerback position. Nate Hobbs, he has been the man at corner this year again. He's CB1 for me. 11.5% tackle efficiency is really strong for the cornerback position. It's about 2% higher than the average. So like that quite a bit for Nate Hobbs. He's pretty much locked into CB required starting lineups no matter what. And then along the defensive line, there is really only one player to consider, and that is Max, who now has 11 X's added to his name. Crosby, 10 and a half sacks on the year. He's edge 5 for me this week. Going up against Juwan Taylor, who's a little bit below average as far as offensive tackles go in pass blocking, 65.2 pass block grade, so 46th among tackles. But it's Patrick Mahomes. That is the biggest barrier here for a potential Max Crosby sack. Mahomes still the best in the league as far as pressure to sack conversion rate goes, just 8.7% in that regard. So really, really good. Continues to be kind of a magician there at avoiding sacks and escaping the pocket. So Max Crosby still has the potential to deliver some tackles, which the Chiefs are about average at as far as giving up tackles to the defensive line position. Max Crosby plays 100% of snaps. So whenever we get that from a defensive lineman, they're going to be pretty much considered a starter for IDP. But when you're also as good of a pass rusher as Max Crosby is, he is locked into every lineup. So that is my Max Crosby rant for the day. All right. Next game on the list. I'm not going to forget to put the timestamp this time. Sorry for anybody that has to listen to that rambling, but just to keep myself sane here as I'm talking to myself. The Buffalo Bills at the Philadelphia Eagles is next up on the list, and we'll start with the Philadelphia Eagles IDPs. Buffalo, a nice matchup for. Oh, there we go. Buffalo is a nice matchup for giving up linebacker tackles on a per game basis. They're giving up the 8th most tackles to the linebacker position. The only problem is the Philadelphia Eagles linebackers are not great. So Zach Cunningham, we saw last week, took over that LB1 role. Nicholas Morrow was the second guy. I talked about it last week, how I thought there was at least a chance that Philadelphia would revert back to what they did last time Nakobe Dean was on injured reserve, in that Nicholas Morrow would be the every down guy and Zach Cunningham would be part-time. Well, I was wrong. It does happen from time to time. Zach Cunningham did play near every down role. It wasn't 100% of snaps. He played 91%, and Nicholas Morrow was around 70%. So Nicholas Morrow, one of the most inefficient off-ball line. Actually, he's the most efficient off-ball linebacker as far as tackle efficiency goes, and guys who have played at least 50% of the defensive snaps, 8.3%. That's lower than your average cornerback tackle efficiency or safety tackle efficiency for what it's worth. So really not great numbers there for Nicholas Morrow. When he's not playing an every down role, you like him even less. So Zach Cunningham, probably the only one worthy of starting, but more in that LB3 range, even though it's a decent matchup here for linebackers. Again, a decent matchup for safeties as well. Reed Blankenship is somebody that we've liked quite a bit this year. He's safety 7 for me this week. The Bills giving up the 11th most tackles to the safety position. Kevin Byard is also in that safety 2 range for me. I know he had the pick last week, but doesn't necessarily have the tackle output that we would get from a Reed Blankenship. So that's why he comes in a little bit lower. Bill's also given up the 3rd most tackles to the cornerback position. Darius Slay would be somebody to kind of consider. I have him in the top 10. I think it's actually CB10 this week. James Bradbury in that CB2 to 3 range as well. And then, the Bills defensive line. It's a pretty heavy rotation there. I think it's Gregory Rousseau is probably the guy that I have ranked the highest, as well as Ed Oliver for defensive tackle required leagues. All right. As far as the Buffalo Bills IDPs go, why was I talking about? Yeah, sorry. I'm talking about previously I said Gregory Rousseau, and I'm confusing myself here. This is what happens when I talk by myself for too long. But the Eagles IDPs on the defensive line, it being obviously Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Jalen Carter, and Fletcher Cox are the main guys there. Like Hassan Reddick, it's so hard to bench him. He even got a sack last week against Patrick Mahomes. So he's pretty much been matchup proof this season. So he's not leaving lineups. Josh Sweat is probably the one that has it a little bit tougher here going against the Bills and Josh Allen, who has also done a really nice job at avoiding sacks. Okay, now I could talk about the Buffalo Bills and start with their linebackers as well. Terrell Bernard, LB 13 for me this week. The Eagles giving up the 18th most tackles to the linebacker position. Bernard is the lone every down linebacker for the Buffalo Bills, while Tyrell Dodson LB 57. He's playing around that 60 to 70% of snap range. The Bills are playing way more dime personnel than they're probably comfortable with, way out of their norm as far as that personnel goes. They've typically been a two linebacker team, but we've seen them kind of shift in a different direction as they've lost options at the linebacker position. It definitely happens, and sometimes you have to adjust based on available personnel. So Terrell Bernard, really the only one worth starting in IDP leagues. The Eagles also given up the most tackles to the safety position. So like that quite a bit for somebody like Jordan Poyer, for example. He's safety 8 for me this week. We'll see if Micah Hyde plays. He's questionable. Taylor Rapp questionable. Teron Johnson also questionable at corner. He's dealing with the concussion. We saw him actually. He got in the ambulance, I believe, last week. So I doubt we see Teron Johnson this week. And then what I said about the Buffalo Bills defensive line earlier between Gregory Rousseau and Ed Oliver, those are really, Ed Leonard Floyd, really the only guys worth considering, but not the best matchup here against a very good Philadelphia Eagles defensive line. All right, little water break there. Good to go again. And let's talk about Sunday Night Football. It is Derwin James versus Kyle Hamilton. This is the real matchup. You can forget about Lamar Jackson versus Justin Herbert, the things that people are going to be tuning in here for. Derwin versus Kyle Hamilton, obviously. So let's start with the Chargers IDPs then, because we're talking about Derwin and Kyle Hamilton. And we'll start with the safety. The Ravens are giving up the third most tackles to the safety position this year. Derwin James doesn't leave the safety one spot in my rankings anyways, but again, this is a great matchup for him. The Ravens are also giving up the third most tackles to the linebacker position. So Kenneth Murray, LB 20 for me this week. He's the lone every down linebacker for the Chargers. Eric Hendricks not playing every down, but it is a decent matchup for him. So you're looking for like a linebacker streamer this week that might be available. He could be a potential option, but again, every team playing this week, there's a lot of options to kind of consider out there. The Ravens aren't giving up much tackles to the cornerback position. Guys like Asante Samuel kind of hurt from that, especially Michael Davis as well, who's had up and down playing time. And then as for pass rushers and their defensive line, Joey Bosa lands on injured reserve today, actually, dealing with a foot or ankle injury that took him out very early in last game. So it's really Khalil Mack and Tuli Tuipulotu that you're really interested in here. Not the most amazing matchup here going against the Baltimore Ravens strong offensive line, but Lamar Jackson at least does have a tendency to take some sacks, but they're not, surprisingly for a run heavy team, they're not giving up a ton of tackles to the defensive line position, 21st most, so below average there. And then on the Ravens IDP side of things, the Los Angeles Chargers are actually giving up the fewest tackles to the linebacker position this season. So this is not me telling you to sit Roquan Smith. You just don't do that. He's been too good, too efficient to ever sit. He's, again, one of those matchup proof players. So he's still LB4 for me this week. Just a little bit away from his, typical LB1 or LB2, still in that top 5 range. It's not anything to be concerned about. Patrick Queen could be a tougher matchup for somebody like him, right? So he's LB28 for me this week. I know Patrick Queen has been an amazing IDP this year, but really has done it based on volume, the snaps that he's played. And he's also got 4 sacks on the year, which has really helped. But he's actually been a below average tackler, which I don't think people realize. 11.9% tackle efficiency for Patrick Queen, which again, it's below that 13.4% average, where somebody like Roquan Smith, 16.8%. So I think that's either second or third behind. Zaire Franklin is number 1, but Roquan Smith just behind him there, 16.8%. Really, really strong tackle number. So that's why he's such a matchup proof option. Whereas somebody like Patrick Queen, as well as he's played this year and as good of an IDP as he's been, it could be hurt by this matchup against the Chargers, giving up, again, the fewest tackles to the position. And then we got Kyle Hamilton, mentioned him. The Chargers giving up the 12th most tackles to the safety position. Really like Kyle Hamilton again this week. Safety 6 for me. We've seen him play a little bit more of that slot role recently, which could be nice, especially going up against Keenan Allen, who is a slot heavy wide receiver and somebody that is going to be the clear favorite target for Justin Herbert and that Chargers passing offense. Chargers also giving up the second most tackles to the cornerback position. So it's possible that we see Marlon Humphrey back this week. I think the way Jim Harbaugh described it was he's hopeful that Marlon Humphrey will be back this week. So if he is, it's a really nice matchup for him to have some potential production there. Brandon Stevens as well. I know we liked him last week too, but he didn't deliver. But again, Joe Burrow got hurt in that game, so really kind of threw off the Bengals offense. So like this for a nice bounce back spot for somebody like Brandon Stevens in those CB required leagues as well. The only other matchup that I wanted to focus on here for the Ravens was Odafe Owe, who's playing amazing this year, draws a very, very difficult matchup against Rashawn Slater and Justin Herbert, who doesn't take up a lot of sacks. But Rashawn Slater, 82.8 pass blocking grade on the year, tied for 6th best among offensive tackles. He's only given up 1 sack all year. But yeah, Odafe Owe, he's been awesome this year. We've been able to start him. I don't know that I'm necessarily starting him this week. Is more in the edge 3 range for me. Despite him having a career year, 80.5 pass rush grade, 19.4% pressure rate, 18.8% win rate. Those are really top 15 marks across the board for Odafe Owe. So just this week, it makes it a little bit tougher to trust them given the matchup. All right, Monday Night Football. We made it here. Chicago Bears at the Minnesota Vikings. And I will start with the Minnesota Vikings IDPs because why not talk about Ivan Pace when given the chance? And Ivan Pace's season is continuing here because he has been anointed as the LB1 here in Minnesota. Now that not anointed, but he kind of fell into it by default thanks to the Jordan Hicks injury. But we'll frame this however we want here for Ivan Pace stands. But I got him as LB16 this week. He played his first 100% snap game in the NFL this past week, delivered a really productive showing, which included an elite 18.2% tackle efficiency. The Vikings are the 6th most zone-heavy defense in the NFL. You pair that with his every down role, it gives him a nice boost for IDP production, which is why we've seen Jordan Hicks was delivering at a top 12 rate as well. Again, strong matchup here against the Bears, who are coming off a game where they actually gave up 31 total tackles to the linebacker position. And over the last 3 are averaging 20.7 tackles per game to the linebacker position, which is among the highest marks in the league, obviously. So really like this for Ivan Pace, who is the lone every down linebacker on Minnesota. There isn't really another option worth considering. So things are lining up perfectly here for a really strong Ivan Pace week. I know, if you look at the overall numbers on the year for Chicago, what they've given to the linebacker position, it's about average to slightly below average. But over the last 3 games is where we're really seeing a nice jump in that regard. And it's a really great matchup here for Ivan Pace to take advantage of. The Bears are also giving up the 23rd most tackles to the safety position. It's always tough with the Minnesota safeties. There's 3 of them that are playing an every down role. They've all been really good. So it's hard to rank these guys. I basically have done it by their tackle efficiency and how good they've been in that regard. So Cameron Bynum is safety 13 for me. Tackle efficiency of 11.9%. Then it's Josh Metellus at safety 15. He's got a 10% tackle efficiency, which puts Harrison Smith a little bit on the lower end this week in a non-favorable matchup. He's safety 27. He has an 8.6% tackle efficiency, right? So lowest of the group, and again, not a favorable matchup. So if I had to put them in an order, it's Bynum, Metellus, and then Smith this week. Bears giving up the 7th most tackles to the cornerback position. So Byron Murphy's my highest ranked Minnesota cornerback at CB 19. And then they're also giving up the 8th most tackles to the defensive line position. So guys like Danielle Hunter, DJ Wonnum, Harrison Phillips, who play a lot of snaps, are in a nice spot there. So Hunter's edge 6, Wonnum edge 39. I know he's had gotten sacks. I don't trust the pass rush metrics for him. He's been really inconsistent. We've seen this before in the past couple of years with DJ Wanham, where he's a hot waiver wire target because he gets some sacks, but then just can't keep it going throughout the rest of the season. And Harrison Phillips as well, DT17 for me this week in that edge 2 kind of, or DT2 kind of range, just because he's been such a tackle monster and playing such a high rate of snaps. All right, last team of the week is the Chicago Bears. The Minnesota Vikings are allowing the 6th most tackles to the linebacker position. TJ Edwards has been unreal this year. He's LB2 for me this week. He's not leaving anybody's lineups. The only question I think is Tremaine Edmonds. So Edmonds is LB22 for me this week. Obviously draws the great matchup against the Vikings along with Edwards, but for Edmonds, I think there is maybe slight concern of him being eased back into action coming off the injury, which we did see last week. So he played 66% of the team's defensive snaps in week 11 after missing 2 straight games, which has been the case for a lot of players coming off injury this year. These guys getting kind of eased back in. So I'd imagine his snaps increase this week, giving him some more time to get healthy and things like that. So that's why he's still in that LB22 range for me, but definitely something to at least be aware of, especially for Jack Sanborn managers. I know, he had the productive game in week 11, even got a sack in there. So you got to expect Jack Sanborn's playing time to come down as Tremaine Edmonds' playing time goes up, right? So I think we could expect to see that this week. Other than that, Jaquan Brisker, safety 4, slightly below average matchup for safeties, but Jaquan Brisker has been great. Cornerback Kyler Gordon, CB4, another guy who's been really good for his position for IDP production. The Vikings giving up the 11th most tackles to the cornerback position. And then the last player worth talking about is Montez Sweat. So don't love Montez Sweat this week, basically. Edge 32 for me this week, going up against Brian O'Neill at right tackle, I believe it is, who has a 75.9 pass blocking grade on the year, 19th among offensive tackles. And Josh Dobbs, despite having one of the highest times to throw in the league, he's been really great at avoiding sacks. I think top 5 or at least top 10 in that regard. So not a great matchup for Montez Sweat. And he's really the only Bears defensive line that we can really consider here. All right. That will wrap us up under 2 hours, which is, not bad. I know I had to go solo there and kind of speed along things. So hopefully people didn't mind that. And it's hard. Obviously we got the Thanksgiving this week. So appreciate Justin coming on here and giving up some of his time so that we can go over these games. As a Canadian, I don't have the same constraints here for time. It's not Thanksgiving for me, but I do appreciate anybody that's able to listen and tune in this Thanksgiving weekend. I thank you all very much. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the PFF Fantasy YouTube channel as well. It helps a ton. But again, thank you to Justin too. Again, you can find his work on fantasypoints.com and at Down with IDP on Twitter as well. For me, we got the IDP fantasy report up on pff.com this week. That's free. We'll have the IDP rankings up in the episode description and on the website as well Thursday morning, along with the wide receiver, cornerback, man zone coverage report and the offensive line, defensive line matchups to target and avoid as well. So again, thank you to anybody that watched this during the Thanksgiving weekend. I understand it's a busy time with holidays, so I appreciate you all tuning in. Have a very happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the games this weekend. We got 4 of them from Thursday to Friday, which is fun. Enjoy the turkey as well. And until next time, peace out.